Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. Most of what we talk about is, okay, out in the St. Lawrence River right now, you use drop shots at X number of feet. And by the way, just along with that, in talking with a lot of the anglers that came from all over the country this last weekend, they were surprised at the number of fish that they were still catching in shallow water. But let me deviate from that a little bit, and let's just go to just your everyday fishing, whether you're in the St. Lawrence, where you're not going to catch as many little fish, or you're fishing any of the other rivers around the Oswegatchie, the Grass, the St. Regis. You know them all, the Racket. And a lot of the fish that you catch are going to be much smaller. And I'm assuming that in today's age, when we don't eat as many of these fish because the DEC tells us that it probably isn't safe for us, one meal a month and all that, we're going to release these little fish that we catch. So how do we release them so that they can live and go on and become bigger? Because little fish, you can't handle the same as you do big fish. If you catch a big bass, most people grip it by the lower jaw, and then they work the hook out. But they have a place to grab it. They grab it by the jaw. This can cause damage too, and I know that, but I'm not going to go into that. But with little fish, you can't really grab them by the jaw because the jaw isn't big enough. So you've got to hold them in your hand. And when you hold them in your hand, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to start wiggling and flapping and try to get away. So what do? You squeeze harder. You could hurt them in squeezing, or you can rub the slime off them. So it's not an easy thing to do. You would think it'd be easy, but it isn't. And then if you combine the, I'll say, problem of using littler hooks, a lot of times they ingest those on the strike deeper in their mouth because they're littler. And so they can ingest them and they go deeper. And now you've got to try to get your hand in there. So here's my tips. Number one, when you hold them, the less you hold them tightly, the less likely they are going to wiggle. If you can just let the fish lay in your hand, this is easier said than done, and I realize this, but the less you try to squeeze, the less they're going to try to wiggle. And so it gives you a better chance to try to release the hook. Second of all, when they ingest these baits deeper in their mouth, your fingers, your hand, your thumb is going to be too big to really get in there very deeply and get a hold of that small hook. So what do? The number one thing that you should always carry with you, always, I don't care if you're in a boat or you're waiting or whatever you're doing, is a pair of small needle nose pliers. And those little slender tips of those noses on the pliers will go in, and you can leverage the hook point and try to get it out. If the key to really having that fish survive is, number one, not to remove any more slime from it than you can, because that holds all its antibacterial fighting parts of that fish to fight infection. Second of all, try not to hook into its gullet or its gills. If your hook goes in the gills and you start tearing those gills or they start bleeding, that can be a real danger. And the second thing is in their stomach. They design hooks that are harder for the fish to ingest in their stomach, not because they're bigger, but because, and they're called circle hooks. And if you go to the store, you can see, they'll say right on the package, circle hooks. And the tip of the hook almost starts bending back in a circle form. And that, for some reason, the fish tend not to ingest it. It doesn't make it any less appealing, attractive, or anything to the fish. It just doesn't direct itself into their deep stomach quite the same. So these are my tips. When you handle the fish, be as careful as you can. Don't hold them tightly. And second of all, have needle nose pliers so that you can get those little hooks out. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.